count and he can't sit still for more than 5 minutes, he's going to practice all day Saturday. And he's going to practice all day Sunday. And you're going to practice learning how to read until you can, or you see me every weekend, you get no break. You're going to practice learning how to sit still for more than 5 minutes every weekend, or you don't get no break. You're going to practice learning how to count all day Saturday and all day Sunday until you learn how. And I guarantee y'all, after one weekend, half of our learning disabilities will disappear. Stop letting your children hustle you. Stop letting your children play games on you. See, what you need to understand, Cincinnati, is the reason why your children got to take all these tests. Why we test the kids so much? You got to take a test for this, and a test for that, and a test for this, and a test for that, and a test for college, and a test to be a police officer, and a test for law school, and a test for med school. You know why America tests its people more than any other country in the developed world? It's because testing is the new Jim Crow. Testing is the new form of racism. Testing is how you deny opportunity to black people without telling them it's because you're black. Listen, I've been giving IQ tests for 25 years. And the IQ test does not measure how intelligent your child is. It only measures how well they've been taught. It measures how close they've been exposed to middle-class white American experiences. It don't measure intelligence. There's 4 scales on the IQ test. There's a processing speed scale, how fast your child can execute mental tasks. There's a working memory scale, how well your child can manipulate different sets of information in mind at the same time. There's a nonverbal reasoning scale, how well your child can solve problems that don't require language, like the Rubik's Cube or Legos. And then there's one more scale. Now, on processing speed, black children score as well as Caucasians and Asians. On working memory, black children score just as well as Caucasians and Asians. Nonverbal reasoning, black children score just as well as Caucasians and Asians. So if black children score just as well as everybody else on 3 of the scales of the intelligence test, how do we explain the 15-point black-white test gap that has been a feature in American society since Dr. King walked the earth? You know how we explain it? By the 4th scale. And what is the name of that 4th scale of most intelligence tests? Verbal comprehension. That's why the black kids don't catch up. Verbal comprehension. You want to know what that is? Those are the words, ideas, and concepts that come from middle-class white America that black children never been taught, don't been exposed to, and has nothing to do with how intelligent they are. So you might say, Dr. Umar, why don't they just take out that verbal scale from the IQ test, since it's the racially biased aspect of the IQ test? They'll never do that. Because if you take out the verbal scale from the IQ test, you level the playing field. Now black children start scoring just as high as Asians and Caucasians. And that's a problem. Because if black children are scoring just as well as Asians and Caucasians, how do you explain the level of opportunity we don't get? See, you need to understand, in order for Ohio State, in order for the University of Ohio to explain why you only got 1 or 2 blacks working on a med degree, or 1 or 2 blacks working on an engineering degree, or 1 or 2 blacks working on a law degree. How do you explain that if black children score just as high or higher than the Asians and the Caucasians? You can't explain. So the way you keep the status quo, the way you keep white privilege alive, the way you keep Caucasians in charge is you make sure the black people fail the test. Wait a minute, Dr. Umar. How are you going to make sure a certain group fail and a certain group pass? I'm glad you asked the question. When we come up with tests, there's a process called standardization. Do your research on standardization. I know about standardization because I helped participate in the standardization of some of the most popular tests in America. Standardization is a process of normalizing the test. So do you know what we do during standardization? We go and test every possible demographic of children in America. We test black kids with rich parents. We test black kids with poor parents. We test black kids whose parents just came out of prison. We test black kids with a single mother. We test black kids with a single father. We test black kids with a mom with a GED, and a father with a master's, and a grandparent with a PhD. You test every demographic in American society. You do that for the black kids. You do it for the brown kids. You do it for the red kids. You do it for the yellow kids. You do it for the white kids. Now here's the question. When your child takes the Ohio State Achievement Test, they might get 12 math questions. They might get 12 comprehension questions. They might get 12 reading questions. But when we standardized, there was 500 questions. How did they decide which of those 500 questions ended up in the final 12 questions? They looked at the questions that black kids scored low on. They looked at the questions white kids scored high on. And they chose the final questions for the test. So you will never see a situation in America where the black kids systemically outperform the white kids, because the tests are designed to make sure that don't happen. If I'm wrong, prove it. If I'm wrong, prove it. The whole testing industry is a big scam because you already know how the children are going to perform because we already tested everybody. Now, getting back to the black family. One of the things we got to recognize is there will be no black family if we don't deal with mental illness in the black community. We have mental illness. Yes, we do. You can't go through what we went through and not have some form of mental illness. You went through 246 years of dehumanization. When slavery was over, there was no healing process. We went right into Reconstruction, more racism. We went into Jim Crow, more racism. We went into civil rights, more racism. Black power, more racism. We've never had a period of calm and peace in this country. That stress we carry. Not only do you carry your stress, you carry your ancestors' stress with you. And this is why we mistreat each other every day. This is why black people ain't got no patience with each other. This is why it's so easy for us to kill, stab, and hurt each other verbally or physically, because the only person a black person can hurt in America and get away with it is another black person. We need healing centers. Non-denominational healing centers. I ain't got a problem with your Islam. I ain't got a problem with your Christianity. I ain't got a problem with you being a Hebrew. I ain't got a problem with you being a Jehovah's Witness. I ain't got a problem with whatever religion you belong to. But my issue is when you try to force every other black person to worship God like you do. Who put you in charge? And how do you know if the way I need to build my relationship with God has to be the same the way you chose to build your relationship with God? One of our problems in the black community is we have to stop being religious chauvinists. Negroes are so self-righteous that if you would accept Christ, I can't work with you. So self-righteous, if you're not a Muslim, I can't work with you. So self-righteous, if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, I can't work with you. And last time I checked, when the police pull you over, they don't ask you what your religion is, but they know you're black. And because I'm older than Jesus, because I'm older than Muhammad, because I'm older than Moses and Abraham, the pyramids was already built before most of them came into this world. We didn't already walk the earth for millions of years before they came. They nothing new. They late. Not a problem for you to believe in them, but don't you force me to do it. Because if religion was all we needed, we won't have no problems. Because you got a church on every other corner in Cincinnati, and every problem is still here. So religion clearly ain't about solving your problems. And for my pastors in the room, you got to do a better job of using your stewardship to lead our people into salvation. Because I'm sick and tired of churches taking money from black people, but not investing back into black people. The black church takes too much money. The black church takes too much of our time. And the black church takes too much of our hope to not give us nothing back for it. The Honorable Marcus Garvey was a Christian. I ain't got no problem with the church. Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, the first black pastor to say God was black, was a Pan-Africanist. Most of my Pan-African forefathers were pastors of the Christian church. So your religion ain't my problem. It's how you use it. But even more, why do we go to churches and other religious institutions who don't do nothing for the community? If you really are in the service of God, if you really are in the service of the Almighty, if doing God's work is your business, how can you be so comfortable with your people catching hell? Brothers and sisters, we got to deal with the mental health. I'm looking at all these black men coming across my news feed who are killing their wives and baby mothers and fiancés and children and taking their own life. We never did that. Once upon a time in America, if you heard a man killed his kids and himself, you knew it wasn't us. Today, you can no longer make that assumption. Now we are taking out our women and our children. And black men, you got to have enough self-respect and respect for your mother that if you got domestic abuse problems, you have to separate from that woman until you get your act together. Too many black women are being beat on a regular basis by the men they love, and nobody is intervening, not even the church. Domestic violence is a very big problem in our community. And it's a problem in the black consciousness community. How are we going to have black families if the families are filled with drama and codependencies? And brothers and sisters, I'll tell you something. The reason we got so much depression and anxiety in the black community is because we have lost our relationship with the Almighty. See, some of you think that your relationship with church means a relationship with God. God ain't got nothing to do with the church. You might find God in the church, but you can find God without the church. And so you get into this thing where you start thinking your religious rituals and activities and books and scriptures means God. It does not. You can build a relationship with God without going to no church at all. And I'm not saying don't go to church. I'm not saying that. I'm simply saying that, as Christ said himself in your good book, that the temple of the Almighty is within, not without. Everything you need to build a better life is within you. But the problem with us Africans in America is we have gotten drunk off the wine of European materialism. And we have been seduced into believing that everything you need to be happy is outside. That's why you keep buying new cars every year, because you think if you get the best car, you'll feel better. This is why you got to buy the most expensive clothes, because if I just get the best thing, I'll feel better. And you fail to realize your spirit does not thrive off of what you wear. Your spirit don't thrive off of what you drive. Your spirit don't thrive off of where you live. But capitalism has made us believe that you get happier with the things you own. And so now you got 20 pair of high heels, you got 10 cars, 1 million gold chains, every pair of Air Jordan ever made, and you still miserable as hell. Because you have neglected your internal life for your external. And I would argue that black people, we have become a race of idol worshipers. Yes, you worship money, not God. Stop lying. You worship clothes, not God. You worship hair, not God. You worship food and sex and pleasure. You don't worship God.
Oh my God, I just had that conversation with my husband.
Give that sister some libation. Brothers and sisters, one of the things we're going to have to rebuild in the black community as we move forward, and that is we're going to have to rebuild the council of elders in every black community. If you here and you 65 years or older, and if we were to put it at 60, we can put it at 60, but it's usually 65. Those elders in Cincinnati who are 65 and older. Those elders in Cleveland who are 65 and older. Those elders in Youngstown and Columbus who are 65 and older. Those elders in Toledo and Xenia who are 65 and older, they need to start meeting and come up with some rules for the black community. Because if we had a council of elders in Cincinnati, half the violence could be cut down. If we had a council of elders in Cincinnati, we won't be fighting each other in family court, in child support court. If we had a council of elders to resolve disputes we have between each other, the black community in Cincinnati will be a more peaceable place. There is nothing more embarrassing to our ancestors than to see black people running back to the same people who once owned them to solve their domestic disagreements. Have you ever seen something like that in your life? The only thing worse than that is when I walk into a house to do therapy and I see a picture of a Caucasian Jesus on the ground. Raise your hand if you still have a Caucasian Jesus on the ground. I don't have a problem with him having one, because he's Caucasian. The question is, why do you have one as an African? Brothers and sisters, we need our council of elders, but you know what else we need? We need black men to come back into the black community and work with our boys in a capacity outside of entertainment and athletics. I don't know about you, but I am sick and tired of black boys being socialized to be athletes. Why is it the only time I see black men engaging black boys is to exploit their young talent for your ego? I'm so tired of every black boy wanting to be a football player, a rapper, and a basketball player. Listen, I've been speaking at career days for 25 years. And guess what? For 25 years, black boys are still raising their hand to tell Dr. Umar, I want to be a football player, a rapper, or a basketball player. Guess whose fault that is? That's not Lil Wayne's fault. That's not 50 Cent's fault. That's not LeBron James's fault. You know who's at fault for that? Professional black men. You Negroes in this room who live in white neighborhoods, who make too much money to come back to the hood and do something other than be a damn coach. We don't need you to be a coach. We need you to be a father figure to boys who don't have one. And can we please stop blaming single black mothers for everything that goes wrong in the black community? We should be thanking single black mothers for holding it together. Because if it wasn't for the single black mother, it would be worse now than it is right now. Every time, not now, sister, I'm talking. Every time, you catching the African Holy Ghost, hold on. Every time I go to a meeting to talk about crime, to talk about low graduation, to talk about youth unemployment, everybody says, well, if the parents just took care of their kids. Well, guess what? Over 60% of our children are raised by a single mother with multiple children, working multiple jobs. With her own medical issues, she got to manage as well. And you mean to tell me with everything that a single black mother has to do, we want to burden her with even more, but put no burden on the church at all. Put no burden on our black elected officials at all. Put no burden on our community organizations at all. Put no burden on our black businesses at all. You mean to tell me you got institutions who's supposed to be about the black family, who ain't doing much for the black family, but we're going to scapegoat the black mother? What a shame that is. In African culture, men raise boys, whether they're their own or not. When that boy gets to be 10 years old, the men take him from their mother and turn him into a man. We don't do that. We take them from their mother and turn them into a basketball player. We take them from their mother and turn them into a rapper. We take them from their mother and turn them into a football player. What happened to taking them from their mother and turning them into a man? What am I trying to say as I wrap this up? I'm trying to say that although America has done a lot to us, and America owes us, yes, we entitled to reparations. America has given reparations to groups of people who weren't even victimized on this soil. So of course we are entitled to reparations. And we will get our reparations. But let us not distract ourselves from the fact that as a $2 trillion people, we could solve most of our problems ourselves, even without the reparations. Why are we not buying up the vacant schools in Cincinnati and turning them into independent black schools? Why are we not coming together to build an independent black bank of Cincinnati so we can finance all of our brothers and sisters into their own businesses? Why we ain't building a central black supermarket in Cincinnati so our people can eat real food, not that stale food and fake food that you're getting from these supermarkets around here? Why are we not coming together to build a central black manufacturing sector or distribution network? Come on, brothers and sisters. With all of us who dying in these hospitals, our elders that killed us off during COVID, and we still don't want to build our own hospitals, but we will spend $2 billion a year on Air Jordans, $4 billion a year on liquor, $1 billion a year on chicken, turkey, beef, and pork, financing your own cancer diagnosis. All I'm saying is they owe us, but you owe yourselves first. What good is external reparations without an internal reparations to come before it? I want to say something to our Caucasians visiting tonight. Because some of you may leave here and say, he was a racist. And I need you to understand something. That I harbor no hate or ill will towards anyone in this room, no matter what your color. But I want you to understand as Caucasian people that you have created a set of circumstances that have put black people in the situation that we are in. And rather than address those circumstances, you would rather forget the crimes of the past and act like you don't have solutions for the present. The truth of the matter is, every Caucasian in America participates in the system of white supremacy. There is no Caucasian in America who does not benefit nor uphold the system of inequitable distribution of resources and opportunities. So if you really care about making Cincinnati fair to black people, you will go back to your white communities. You will go back to your white neighborhoods and your white friends and your white organizations, and you will fight to end racism amongst white people. There's nothing more hypocritical than for a Caucasian to join a black organization claiming to fight against racism. Why do you need to join black people to fight against a problem that originates with your people? When I talk to Caucasians, and they love to talk to me, and I ain't got no problem with it. They say, what can we do? What can you do? Isn't your father a judge? How many black people he locked up this year? What can you do? Your mother is an elected official. How many resources has she brought to the black community? What do you mean, what can you do? Isn't your cousin the CEO of that bank? How many mortgages did he decline to black people this year? Stop acting like you don't know where the problems are, white people. You know where the problems are. And I cannot change my message because you are here. Because if there is one privilege that many Caucasians are used to, and it is the privilege of knowing that even if it's just one of them in an army of blacks, that we will twist and turn and compromise our message to make them comfortable. And on a day that my 4 times great-grand cousin Frederick Douglass joined the ancestors, in his honor, I refuse to not speak truth to power when I have an opportunity to. When I say that all white people are racist, I'm not saying all white people are bigots. I don't believe every white person wants to eliminate every black person. I don't believe that. Not all white people are bigots, but all white people are racist. What do you mean by that? I mean that every white person knows of a white person who engages in discrimination against blacks. And you turn a blind eye to it every day. Racism is not about hating black people. That's bigotry. Racism is about the monopolization of resources, opportunities, and privileges in the hands of your community. And unless you're fighting for redistribution of resources, opportunities, and privileges so black Cincinnati has the same chances as white Cincinnati, then you too are guilty of racism. Brothers and sisters, Frederick Douglass left this world. I might need somebody to go back there and calm the young people down. Brother got the African Holy Ghost back there. Frederick Douglass passed away at 7:30 p.m. You got him? Tell them to quiet down a little bit, my brother. Frederick Douglass passed away on February the 20th, 1895. He had just come from a National Council of Women's meeting in Washington, D.C. He returned home to Cedar Hill, and at Cedar Hill, he fell to his knees from a heart attack, and then he fell even further onto his chest and face. And he and his wife were supposed to go to another meeting that night, but he would not make it. And so at the age of 77, the greatest black leader in American history by far left us. Frederick Douglass was great because not only was he the only black leader we had in both slavery and freedom, Frederick Douglass single-handedly challenged the myth of the intellectual inferiority of black people when he wrote his 1845 autobiography narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. He was the first escaped slave to name himself and his master in his autobiography, and by doing so, he put his life in danger. They said, Frederick, why did you name yourself? You are a piece of property. You can be taken back into slavery. And Frederick Douglass said, if I hide my identity, they would say that a slave did not write this book. In order for me to make America know that the black man is just as intelligent as any other, I must confess who I am. So he had to run off to England. And in England, the Abolition Society raised the money to pay Frederick Douglass, slave master, for his freedom, so he came back to America. They tried to convince Frederick Douglass to stay in England. He said, I can't. I might be free, but my people are not. He comes back, he fights, almost loses his life several times fighting against slavery. And then the Civil War breaks out. Frederick Douglass tells Abraham Lincoln, you need the black man to win this war. And Abraham Lincoln said, I can't do that, Fred. And he said, you better, or you're going to lose the whole country on account of your racism. And so in 1863, President Abraham Lincoln authorized the raising of black troops. And Frederick Douglass sent two of his sons, Lewis and Charles. They go north to Boston. They enroll in the 54th Boston, Massachusetts Colored Regiment. If you've ever seen the movie Glory, Denzel Washington and Morgan Freeman, that's the story of the sons of Frederick Douglass. When the Civil War over, Frederick continues to fight for equality. He fought for the right of women to vote. He fought for full-fledged equality and fought until the day he died. He was a mentor to Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington idolized Frederick Douglass. He was a mentor to Paul Laurence Dunbar, the great black poet. He idolized Frederick Douglass, and he was a close confidant of one of the greatest black women to ever walk the earth, and her name was Queen Mother Ida B. Wells. In fact, had it not been for Frederick Douglass, Ida B. Wells would have been the first black woman in American history to be considered the undisputed leader of blacks in America. That's how powerful she was. And then Frederick breathed his last. I want to close with a quote from Frederick Douglass. My family came to America in 1701. A black man named Bailey stolen from Nigeria. He was brought to Talbot County, Eastern Shore, Maryland. He married a black woman by the name of Selah, for whom my 13-year-old daughter is named. In 1745, they had Grandma Jenny. In 1774, Grandma Jenny gave birth to Grandma Betsy. My 6 times great-grandmother Betsy Bailey was born a slave, but she married a free black man, my grandpa Isaac. They had about 12 children. One daughter was named Harriet. Another daughter was named young Betsy, my 5 times great-grandmother. These 2 sisters were raped by the slave master who owned our family. And as a result of that rape, on February 14th of 1818, Frederick Bailey was born. 1 year later, in June of 1819, his cousin and half-brother, my 4 times great-grandfather, Stephen Henry Bailey, was born. Frederick and Stephen were cousins because the mothers were sisters, but they were also brothers because the slave master raped those sisters. Cousin Fred would run away. My grandpa Stephen didn't get a chance to run away. He married my grandmom Caroline. They had my grandfather George Washington Bailey on November the 14th, 1841. He becomes the first black public school teacher in Denton, Maryland. Grandpa George and Grandpa Steve fought in the U.S. Colored Troops of Maryland during the Civil War. They were at the Appomattox Courthouse when General Robert E. Lee surrendered. My grandfather's was in Galveston, Texas on June 19th, 1865, when General Gordon Granger read Special Order Number 3, emancipating all Africans held in bondage in Texas, that gave birth to the Juneteenth holiday. So don't ever let nobody tell you Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Abraham Lincoln didn't free the slaves. The slaves freed Abraham Lincoln. When the Civil War ends, Grandpa George marries Grandmom Annie. They have Grandmom Caroline. Grandmom Caroline moves to Philadelphia. She has Grandma Vivian. Grandma Vivian marries a Spanish-speaking Cuban immigrant from Havana, my great-grandfather Cicero, who I met on his deathbed. Grandma Vivian and Grandpa Cicero had my grandmom Ida, who passed away 6 years ago. She met and married my grandfather James Johnson. They had my father Jamal. He met and married my mother Barbara in North Philadelphia, and on August the 21st, the anniversary of the Nat Turner War, August the 21st, the anniversary of the Haitian Revolution, August the 21st, the anniversary of the George Jackson War against prison, August the 21st, the day Emmett Till showed up in Money, Mississippi, August the 21st, the day Fannie Lou Hamer showed up in Atlantic City at the 1964 Democratic National Convention, August the 21st, the original birth date for Jesus Christ. I was born in North Philadelphia. Frederick Douglass said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Power can seize nothing without, and it never will. Find out what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found the exact measure of injustice that will be used against them. And these evils will continue until they are resisted with words or with blows or with blood. He who wants to be free must himself strike the first blow. Frederick Douglass said, a man may not get all you pay for, but you will pay for everything that you get. He said, for 20 years, I prayed on my knees to God for freedom. But the good Lord gave Frederick Douglass no freedom until I got up off my knees and started praying with my feet. He said, if you want respect from white people, why do you keep looking for pity? A man who pities you will never respect you. And a man who respects you has no need for pity. The most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, who gave us the largest black movement in history and the only black leader to give us a mass movement without the need for religion. Garvey said, without confidence in yourself, you are twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won even before you have started. Marcus Garvey said, the greatest weapon used against the Negro is disorganization. He said, we don't suffer just because we black. We suffer because we black and disorganized. Garvey said, if the black man and woman are not careful, you will drink in all the poison of Western civilization and you will die from the effects of it. One day, Marcus Garvey was asked, are you an African or are you a Jamaican? And Marcus Garvey looked up and said, you asked me, am I African or am I Jamaican? And I tell you, I would never ever give up a continent for an island. I am an African. Queen Mother Harriet Tubman said, I had already reasoned it out in my mind that I had a right to one of two things, and I would fight until I had one or the other, for no man shall take me alive. Freedom or death. Black Power, Cincinnati.
Man, give it up for Dr. Umar. That was powerful. Give it up. So I got just a few housekeeping things. We in here for a little bit longer. Kathy, can you raise your hand? She has index cards. We're going to be having a panel here soon. But first, I want to call Ralph Bolden up, a Frederick Douglass board member, to read a poem real quick while we get ready for the panel.
For those of y'all who purchased one of my books, when we're completely done here, I'll sign them. If anybody wants a photo, again, when we're completely done here, we can take those pics. Let me give you my cell number for my parents who might need to reach out to me for help with your children. Take this number. I'm going to repeat it 3 times. 215-989-9858. 215-989-9858. One more time. 215-989-9858. Peace and Pan-Africanism. Snow bunnies now.
Dr. Johnson. It's my pleasure to meet you. And I thought I'd do something special. I see you on podcasts. I like your style.
Quiet down, family. Quiet down.
And I like your message. So I'm not going to let you get out of Ohio without hearing some Paul Lawrence Dunbar.
Oh, yes, sir.
And I want to compliment your theme of family. So first, I want to show the brothers how you talk to a woman using Paul Lawrence Dunbar. Young lady, would you like to be graced? Step up here. Let's pretend your name is Louise. Now, poets may sing of their Lady Irene, and they may rave in your rhymes about wonderful queens, but I throw my poetical wings to the breeze and I soar in song to my Lady Louise. A sweet little maid who's dearer, Irene, than any fair duchess or even a queen. And when speaking of her, I can't plod in my prose. You see, she's the wee lassie who gave me a rose. Since poets from seeing a lady's lip curl, they've written fair verse that has sweetened the world. Why should not I, in the space of an hour, return with song for such a flower? I've learned in my life, and it has not been long, there's too few of verse and too little of song. And out of that blossom, this lay a man grows. The wee little lassie who gave me a rose. I thank God for innocence that's dearer than art. Lights on a byway that leads to my heart. Led by an impulse no less than divine, comes into the temple and sits down at the shrine. I'd rather pluck daisies than grow in the wild, or pluck the tender rose from the hand of a child than to breathe the rich fragrance of flowers divine in the gardens of luxury, passion, and pride. I know not, my wee one, how came we to know which way to my heart was the right way to go, unless in your purity, so clean and clear, God whispers his messages into your ear. Now you've had my song. Let me end with a prayer. May your life be always sweet, happy, and fair. May your joys be many, and absent your woes. We little lady who gave me a rose. Can you work with that, sister?
Appreciate you, Baba. Great
Give it
job.
up for Mr. Moore. So we're running short on time. I want to call out my panelists, Raven Bundy and Aaron Mallory, CEO of Grow Community, and Raven. She is our favorite millennial on 1230 The Buzz. She was known for Rail Around the Way. She does shows on Sundays. And then we got Aaron Mallory, who's the CEO of Grow Community. We can go ahead and get started.
These the mics?
Yeah, those are the mics.
Oh, they on the table.
Yo,
okay.
y'all can hear us?
Test.
Can y'all hear us?
Test. All right, I can
right.
speak loud enough.
All right, well, I kind of want to pose a question to you, Dr. Umar.
Sure.
You know, so
Test.
to the aspect of black family, and thinking about back in 1960, 25% of single black households was a single parent household, 25%. When we get to today, it's about 65% of black households that are 65% single parent. As we dig a little deeper, and we talk about particularly household makeups, East Indian households' median income is about $104,000. Marriage rate is 94%. Chinese Americans' households' median income is about $110,000, and the marriage rate is 70%. White Americans' household median income is 88, marriage rate is 50%. Hispanic households' median income is 61,000, marriage rate is 70%. When we get to our people, black households' median income is about 55,000, marriage rate is 34%. And with statistics showing that it's likely to decrease into the teens within the next decade. How do we make marriage sexy? So I know you kind of touched on a little bit the aspect of, you know, we got brothers out here that, you know, are struggling, our sisters are educated, our sisters are smart, but I kind of also want to flip it because there's some sharp brothers out here too. 20% of black men have a bachelor's degree. When we talk about the unemployment rate of black men in Ohio, 10%, unemployment rate of black men across the country, 7%. An interesting statistic that I saw, between 1890 and 1960, black men married at a higher rate than white men. And then it flipped after 1960, and particularly in 1980, it went from black men going from 10% not likely to be married to 25% and increasing ever since 1980. So when we think about this thing, and part of our conversation has been around the impact of media and the promotion of things not associated with marriage, but as multiple women, sex, and etc. How do we make marriage sexy, make marriage where it's something valuable? Because we see it's an economic stronghold for our community, but also creates a united family front as well.
Bring it around. Great question, Brother Aaron. Couple things. Number one, we can't assume that a college degree equals economic sustainability. In America, we have over 2 million American Africans with bachelor's and master's degrees who are unemployed. So a college education does not mean you're able to afford a family. With the dates that you gave, those dates were also indicative of major campaigns by the American power structure to destabilize the black community.
Yep.
We know why marriage began to decline in 1970, because the government came into Cincinnati, Cleveland, Detroit, and started removing the industrial factory jobs from the black community. Up until 1970, you didn't need a college education to live a good life. They deliberately economically castrated the black male in the 70s by getting rid of what? The labor employment jobs. Not only did they do that, they came into the high schools, and eliminated the industrial building training programs. Up until 1970, you could graduate high school a licensed plumber, a licensed electrician, a licensed HVAC, a licensed roofer, a licensed welder, a licensed barber, a licensed auto mechanic, and they destroyed it all, which set up for the last statistic that you spoke of in the 1980s. That's when they dropped the crack off. 1990. Bill Clinton crime bill. 3 strikes and you out. Mandatory minimum sentencing. You want to talk about destroying the black family? you have to deal with the Joe Biden, Bill Clinton crime bill. And then in the year 2000, George Bush initiated the take back of the inner cities, gentrification. And then he created the FBI, faith-based initiative, where the government started paying black churches not to speak up for problems facing black people. And then 2010, Barack Obama came in and distracted black people with his presidency while they took everything our ancestors fought for and gave it to all these other minority groups. So we know exactly how we got to where we are. And if you know how you got to where you are, half the solution has already been understood. Black power.
So then, just to follow with that, what's the other half of the solution? Like what, let me ask you this. One, do we believe that in our community, marriage needs to be something that's happening, that's important? And if we do, what is the second half of the solution so that we can eradicate and we can get more black marriages in our community?
Okay. 4 things, as I was saying earlier. There is no improvement of black marriage without economic opportunity for black men. It ain't happening. We have to empower black men. Marriage is just not an issue of masculine responsibility. We have to stop reducing political problems to moral reasons. We do that a lot, and it is not a good thing. We want to reduce everything down to your character. It's not all about character, it's about conditions. You have to make the conditions right for the type of situations that you want to see. So economic empowerment of the black man, because let us be clear, black women are the only women per capita in America who out-educate and out-earn their men. No other group of men has to deal with that. Now, my woman having more education or income than me is not automatically a problem unless my woman has bought into the propaganda of the white power structure that says the black man is undereducated and underemployed because he's lazy and unintelligent. When the black woman bites that apple, now you create a complex situation where you and your man might have to go to emotional warfare because you're judging him by somebody else's narrative and not by the reality under which he lived. We're the only people where the black man and the black woman are blaming each other for problems racism started. Black power.
So I have been coined as, you know, your favorite millennial from my radio career here because most of my audience was my elders. And then, something that I think about quite a bit is the communication gap I see intergenerationally. We have such a hard time having these kinds of conversations between generations because we come from totally different times. How do we, in the black community, address that gap? How do we create conversations and even spaces, safe spaces for conversation where different generations can interact and receive understanding from one another in order for us all to focus on the collective goal of progress?
Great question. Number one, as I said earlier, we need to bring back the Council of Elders. We're not going to progress without the wisdom of our elders. That's one. Number two, the black community suffers from a lack of an intergenerational transfer of power and authority. In the black community, we have a bad habit of elders, some of them, not passing the baton until it's time to go into the casket. This is a big problem. No, I'm being honest. How many churches have we seen go to hell because the elder who opened the church don't want to relinquish control, although he's no longer effective? How many community-based organizations where you have seen this? You see what I'm saying? We're the only people who have 80 and 90-year-old presidents of organizations. No other group has 80 and 90-year-old presidents of organizations. And the reason we have that is most black organizations are dictatorships. You do as I want you to do or you get out. They have no democratic arm at all. In order to change that, we have to sit down and create a leadership training process. So when I get to be 60, he done already been trained at 40. He know what to do. And he's accompanying me along the ride. And we have to move away from one-man leadership to a group-focused leadership. We should have leadership teams, not individual leaders, because they can only be incarcerated, compromised, or executed, right? So we got to create that intergenerational transfer of power. And the last thing that we have to do, we have to start having more community town hall meetings, non-religious. The problem with that, my dear sister, is we don't own enough facilities where we can come together like this and not have people eavesdrop on or participate in sensitive Black community conversations when they don't belong there. The Black church is the only real estate we have. And unfortunately, most Black churches are too afraid of losing their George Bush FBI money to allow us to come in there and have a frank conversation with each other. Black power. Black power.
So in that vein, if we are struggling to find those spaces where we can safely come together and have those conversations, what are we to do? Where do we find those spaces? How do we create them? What does that first step look like?
Well, number one, there's no substitute for building infrastructure, so we got to create some. Until we get there, to your question, take a community center like this. If we're going to have a serious conversation here about the future of Black Cincinnati, the future of Black Ohio, number one, we got to have our IT brothers and sisters come in, sweep this whole building for bugs. We have to make sure no non-Africans are allowed in here. We got to make sure we have appropriate security to throw out agent provocateurs who are going to come in and try to disrupt that meeting. You got to systemically make sure you account for every aspect of a private meeting so you can have a private meeting. It is so hard for Black people to have a private meeting because so many of us are funded by outsiders. When you are funded by outsiders, you have no right to privacy. When they fund you, they tell you it can't be all Black. And for that reason alone, we need to start creating things that are privately funded by us that are all Black. Because every other community, they have all Chinese meetings. If you ain't Chinese, you ain't there. If you ain't Jewish, you ain't there. If you're not an Arab, you're not there. Only in the Black community will you always find outsiders in our meetings because we don't own and control anything. Black power.
So going back to the economics, right? We talk about just particularly like Africa, and really talking about how do we connect the African diaspora. You know, like every time I've been to Kenya, Ethiopia, Nigeria, you know, outside of just getting peace every time I go there, like it's an entrepreneur's gold mine. But also every time I go there, I see how the Europeans are continue to take resources. I'm starting to see now how the Chinese are buying and creating infrastructure, whether roads and highways, creating crazy loans. And so my thing is, how do we get Black people to start thinking about investing in Africa? You know, somewhere like Nigeria, if you pay somebody $900, $1,000 a month, you changing somebody's life drastically. That's how far the dollar carries weight. But for us as Black Americans, how do we start thinking about, hey, how do we go over here? How do we help our brothers and sisters over there, but then also help our brothers and sisters here? Like, how do we, my thing is, I feel like Africa should be like China. Like, we should be manufacturing everything in Africa and then bringing it back here. How do we start thinking about connecting the diaspora from an economic standpoint? Because oftentimes, we talk to Black people, you know, we not, Africa ain't the top thing on our list to go visit. We want to go to Europe, we want to go to everywhere else. And if anything, Black people, we think about Africans as in huts and stuff like that. How do we shift this mindset to see the power if we actually unite the diaspora?
Great question. First of all, and you're absolutely right with everything you said, psychologically speaking, most Black people are not African psychologically. They are Negropeans. Okay? We want to be white, and we're going to marry white and imitate white and act white. We don't want to be African. Let me go back in history for a minute. Our first 200 years in America, everything we built, we called it African. Everything. The African Free Church, the African school, the African this, the African that. We were proud of our ancestry for the first 200. Around the beginning of the 19th century, the 1800s, Black leaders came up with this idea. They said, if we stop acting like we Africans and start acting more like white folks, they might accept us. And from that day until today, we still think that the more white we act, the better our chances will be. And we are wrong. It is time to reclaim your roots. Now, for the Negroes in the room who said you don't come from Africa, good luck with that nonsense. You look just like Shaka Zulu, and I can take you to Africa and show you 20 Africans who look just like you. In fact, we can draw some blood, take a DNA test, and I promise you, Cherokee Indian ain't going to come up as the biggest chunk of DNA in your body, so you can stop that self-hate right now. Now, here's the thing. If we want to reconnect Africans to Africa, we got to start taking them there, which is something that I do. I'm going to be leading a trip to Africa, probably this summer, and I should have the information in the next 30 days if you would like to go with me. Black queens, your hair got to be natural to get on my airplane. I don't do fake hair. I'm tired of it. 400 years is enough. I don't care! Okay? Now, if we want to build African consciousness, we got to start with the children. So at the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, we're teaching them Pan-Africanism as a course. We will be the first grade school in American history that teaches Pan-Africanism as a course. As the children are taught, so are their thoughts. If we want our people to be proud of their Africanity, we got to teach it to the babies. You can't allow our children to be Europeanized for 12 years and then try to re-Africanize them later, because you won't be able to re-Africanize everybody. Most of you who have been Negropeanized, you're going to die Negropeanized. You follow what I'm saying? If you worship blonde hair today, you'll be in your casket with blonde hair on. That's just the reality. So we got to save the babies, because most of the adults have already been psychologically destroyed. That is a psychological reality. We can save about a third of you. The other 66%, we must pray. Black power. Sure.
So I was reading over these questions. They're very good questions, so we'll get to them in a moment. But my last question is, and I guess this is more a question for myself, because I am somebody who is inspired by people like you and also other leaders in the community, in the city, who I am sitting at the feet of as we speak, trying to learn, trying to find my place within, community activism and advocacy. But everybody that I speak to, they speak to me about the struggles that come with living that life, with walking that walk. How do we create the next revolutionary in a time after generations and decades of watching our leaders be taken from us with prejudice? How do we still encourage the future leaders of the community?
Great question, my queen. The right, excellent, most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey said, we can't preoccupy ourselves with our own demise, because we will die struggling for black liberation. But that's not the problem, that we die. Everybody will die. The problem is, when it comes to black people, so much time passes before we find another genuine leader. It's been 57 years since Dr. King. Nobody has come along even close to him. And the reason nobody has come along even close to Dr. King is not that we ain't had some Dr. King types. The problem is, black people like to solve every political problem through a religious interpretation. And what I mean by that is, if European Jews want leaders, they find them, they train them, they build them. Caucasians want leaders, they find them, they train them, they build them. Chinese want leaders, they find them, they train them, they build them. Arabs want leaders, they find them, they train them, they build them. When black people want leaders, we don't find them, we don't train them, we don't build them, we go to church and pray for them. Until black people stop praying for leaders and start making leaders, they don't fall from the sky. You got to make them. Make your leaders. Where is the Cincinnati Black Leadership Training Institution? Make your leaders. Stop praying for your leaders. That's the first part. Second answer to that great question is this. There is no insurance against you losing your life, your reputation. There is no insurance against you going to jail. H. Rap Brown, of the Black Panther Party and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, H. Rap Brown, who wrote the book Die Nigga Die that everybody needs to read, he's still in jail right now. His intellect was on the level of a Malcolm X. He's in jail right now for a crime he did not commit, and we are not even fighting for him. Mamiya Abu-Jamal in jail right now for a crime he did not commit, and we're not fighting for him. The point that I'm making is this. If you're going to give your life to black liberation, you better not do it because you expect your people to support or commend you. Marcus Garvey said black leadership means pain, it means blood, and it means death. You have to be in this because you really believe in black people, not because you're trying to make $1 off of black people. There is no guarantee. People ask me all the time, Dr. Umar, I want to help out, but I don't want to go to jail. Negro, I can't guarantee that. I want to help out, but I don't want to get shot. Negro, there's no guarantee. We do the best we can to stay safe. Nobody's trying to be a martyr, but at the end of the day, here's my question to black people. How can you believe in a man, in Christ, who was sent by his Father to come and die for your sins? Jesus had to shed blood for your sins, and you too scared to shed blood for your freedom. Black power. Black power. Stop being a hypocrite. Stop being a hypocrite. Don't tell me you believe in Jesus Christ and you scared to shed blood for your people. Black power.
Two questions from the crowd.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay, 2 questions. Oh, these are the questions.
Those are the questions.
Okay, I'm going to take that one. How can we better engage black parents in the schools? 3 quick points. Number 1, Cincinnati public schools don't want black parents involved. If anybody in here, if a Negro ever tells you that Cincinnati schools want black parents involved, it's a damn lie. No public school district in America wants black parents holding them accountable. None of them. So what do? Organize black parents outside of the school in order to bring justice in the school. I have an organization called the National Independent Black Parent Association. If you're interested in starting a chapter, please get in contact with me. We organize the parents into 6 committees: homeschooling, school discipline, school policy, school finance, social support, special education, and parent advocacy. We come up with an agenda, and then we take our agenda into the school system. There's nothing wrong with you belonging to the PTA associations, but the PTA associations ain't nothing but COINTELPRO for schools. That's all it is. COINTELPRO. They find out what you're thinking, they find out what you're feeling, and they come up with a way to head you off. The reason why we ain't seen better schools in Cincinnati is because most of your so-called black leadership have been financed by Cincinnati schools to stay out the fight. Your black churches are being paid by Cincinnati schools to stay out the fight. Your politicians are being paid by Cincinnati schools to stay out the fight. Most black organizations and leaders don't want to fight the school system because they rather make money off the school system. So the parents got to organize. Parent power can solve every problem in Cincinnati schools. Let 1,000 black parents from Cincinnati show up. Now, you guys are 40% of the city. Cincinnati is 311,000 strong, right? So that you're about 130,000 strong. You only need 1,000 of you. Let 1,000 black parents start showing up to every school board meeting in Cincinnati. You're going to see a lot of changes quick. You're the solution our children been waiting for. Next question. Dr. I ain't going to do that one. That's a nice one, but that's more personal. Breathe easy. What that say? Medicine? What's that? Behind the scenes and what?
Media. This is a question for me, not for him.
Oh, that's for you.
Yeah.
Dr. Umar, can you speak to the community regardless partial hospitalization program, schools that are made up of majority of black boys, the parents receive a check and the children are placed on meds? Okay, great question. First of all, don't you ever in your life get a black child evaluated for ADHD, conduct disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, intermittent explosive disorder? Because all they're gonna do is put them on drugs. Did y'all hear what I said? If the school says, can you get Raekwon evaluated for ADHD, your answer is no. He's a normal boy, he don't need drugs. Y'all need more activity for boys in this school. That's what you tell them. Because if you take that black boy and get him evaluated at the We Hate Black Kids Behavioral Health Center in Cincinnati, if you take him to get tested at the We Hate Black Kids Mental Health Center in Cincinnati, they're going to stamp him ADHD. They're going to stamp him conduct disorder. They're going to stamp him oppositional defiant disorder. And once the school finds out that he's diagnosed with ADHD, they're going to make you put him on dope. And if you don't put your child on dope, because that's what Ritalin is, that's what Adderall is, that's what Strattera is, that's what Concerta is, it's crack. Synthesized crack. And if you don't give that crack to your children, they're going to call Child Protective Services. And Child Protective Services going to come to your house and say, we heard that your son is diagnosed with ADHD and you won't give him the Ritalin. And if you don't start giving him the Ritalin, we're going to take all your kids. We ain't just going to take Raekwon. We're going to take Method Man, RZA, Jizza, Master Killer, Old Dirty Bastard, Raekwon the Chef, and they're going to take all your kids. No, this real. And then they're going to give your kids to who? Caucasian foster parents in the suburbs. I'm just giving it to you real. Most black kids are not adopted by black people because they don't want us raising our own kids. They're going to give your kids to non-black people where they're going to be taught non-black lifestyles and sent back into your community to create more non-black problems. Stop giving them Ritalin. Stop getting them tested for ADHD. Ain't no daddy at home. Give them some discipline. Ain't no discipline at home. Put them in check. Artificial diet at home disorder, ADHD. Stop with the sugar, caffeine, high fructose corn syrup, red and green food diet. Black power.
Give it up for the panel, y'all. Give it up for the panel. And that concludes our show tonight.
Where I'm going to go to do the photos.
We're doing right out here. We got a table set up for Dr. Umar. He has his books out there. And also, Grow Community is giving away free t-shirts. So please stop by that table. And we're going to conclude the show tonight.
I need a shirt.
It was an honor
Make sure I
and
get a
privilege.
shirt.
I'll see you all soon. I love my people.
I enjoyed you, bro.
Appreciate you.
Shout out to Bro from Chicago. They took that job from me.
Yeah, right here.